The first scripture reading this morning is from Exodus chapter 2, verses 1 to 10. Now a man from this house of Levi went and married a Levite woman. The woman conceived and bore a son. And when she saw that he was a fine baby, she hid him for 3 months. When she could hide him no longer, she got a papyrus basket for him, plastered it with bitumen and pitch. She put the child in it and placed it among the reeds on the bank of the river. His sister stood at a distance to see what would happen to him. The daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe at the river. While her attendants walked beside the river, she saw the basket among the reeds and sent her maid to bring it. When she opened it, she saw the child. He was crying, and she took pity on him. This must be one of the Hebrews' children. Then his sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and get you a nurse from the Hebrew women to nurse the child for you?" And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Yes." So the girl went and called the child's mother. Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this child and nurse it for me, and I will give you your wages." So the woman took the child and nursed it. And when the child grew up, she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. She named him Moses, because she said, "I drew him out of the water."
The second story that we're hearing this morning is from Joshua. Then Joshua, son of Nun, sent 2 men secretly as spies, saying, "Go view the land, especially Jericho." So they went, and they entered the house of a prostitute whose name was Rahab, and spent the night there. The king of Jericho was told, "Some Israelites have come here tonight to search out the land." And so the king sent orders out to Rahab, "Bring out the men that have come to you, that have entered your house, and that have come to search our land." But the woman took the 2 men and hid them. And she said, "True, these men came to me, but I didn't know where they came from, and when it was time to close the gate at dark, the men went out. Where the men went, I do not know. Pursue them quickly if you want to get them." She had, however, brought them up to the roof and hidden them with the stalks of flax that she laid out there. So the men pursued them on the way to the Jordan as far as the fords. As soon as the pursuers had gone out, the gate was shut. Before they went to sleep, she came to them up on the roof and said to the men, "I know that the Lord has given you this land, and that dread of you has fallen on us, that all the inhabitants of the land melt in fear. For we've heard how the Lord dried up the water in the sea, delivered you from Egypt, and what you did to the kings of the Amorites who went beyond the Jordan. As soon as we heard it, our hearts melted, and there was no courage left in any of us. But the Lord your God is indeed God of heaven and earth below. Now then, since I've dealt kindly with you, swear to me by the Lord that you will in turn deal kindly with me and my family. Give me a sign of good faith, that you will spare my father and my mother, my brothers and sisters, and all who belong to them, and deliver our lives from death." The men said to her, "Our life is yours. If you do not tell this business of ours, we will deal kindly and faithfully with you when the Lord gives us the land." Then she let them down by a rope through the window, for her house was on the outer side of the city wall, and she resided within the wall itself. She said to them, "Go toward the hill country, so that the pursuers may not come to you. Hide yourselves there for 3 days until they have returned, and afterwards you can go your way." The men said to her, "We will be released from this oath that you have made us swear to you if we invade the land and you do not tie this crimson cord to your window through which you let us down. And if you do not gather into your house your father and your mother, your brothers, your sisters, all your family, if any of you go out of the doors of your house into the street, then you will be responsible." But if you tell this business of ours, we shall be released from this oath that we have sworn to you." She said, "According to your words, so be it." She sent them away, and they departed, and she tied the crimson cord on the window. They departed and went into the hill country and stayed for 3 days until the pursuers returned. The pursuers had searched all along the way and found nothing. The 2 men came down again from the hill country. They crossed over, came back to Joshua, and told him all that had happened to them. And they said, "Truly the Lord has given all the land to our hands. Moreover, all the inhabitants may melt before us." I pray that my words land with you this morning the way that God intends them to. Family is complicated. We will start there. It can be broken up and defined in many ways, this word family. The first story that we heard is the birth and youth of Moses. This is a story of sacrifice, of hope, of a longing for life. The context of this story is the king of Egypt at the time had a fear that the descendants of Abraham were going to turn against him, were going to overthrow him, and so committed all of those people to slavery. When this doesn't curb his fear, he's still going for it. The people of Israel continued to grow in population. The king then ordered the death of all newborn baby boys. In his mind, if he kills all the newborn babies, nobody will grow up to dethrone him. So let's drop ourselves into what it would mean to be a family in a time like this. Imagine you or someone close to you is expecting a baby, and all the midwives and townspeople have been ordered to kill any boys that are born. What would being a family mean to you in those moments? What would your hopes be? What would you dread? Can you feel the weight of that? How do you call for help? Can you get help? Sleepless nights, many prayers, schemes, and dreams, probably. This is where Moses' family is living at the beginning of this story. Moses' parents felt something special about him and opted to trust in God and find a way to hide him, to have him not be killed immediately. So they were going to risk retribution from the government, possibly even death to themselves, because they had a hope in what was meant for their boy. As kids age, many of you can probably know, they tend to start making more noise, right? And being more difficult to hide. So maybe you've experienced this. They tried to hide him for a few months and then realized that wasn't going to work anymore. So Moses' mother took a basket, put her son in it, lined it so it would float, and floated him to the shallow waters of the river. This was a true act of hopeful desperation, a way for him to grow and have a life that they could perhaps not give to him. Perhaps a compassionate Egyptian person would find him floating and give him life. This is a heartbreaking moment of sacrifice. Moses' older sister then stands and watches as this happened. As an oldest sibling myself, I think about what it would have been like to watch her mother wrap her baby brother, perhaps hum a lullaby or a familiar tune, and drift the boy off into the distance. Thinking about it, I feel kind of helpless. Do these women know that Egyptians usually come down this river? Do they know that anybody will find him and the basket won't just keep floating? They could not have known that whoever found him would disobey the order about murdering baby boys and raise him. They just hoped somebody would. Then comes a stunning revelation. A daughter of the Pharaoh finds the baby in the basket and somehow is filled with compassion for him and adopts him. He was raised in the home of an Egyptian, in the very home that the decree was made where he should die. The Pharaoh's daughter then hires Moses' mother to nurse him. So she gave this sacrifice in hopes that her son would be saved, and now she is getting paid to help raise him. So here we have a mother who's just sacrificed everything so her son could have a better life, likely expecting never to see him again and just hoping and praying that he would live. And now she gets to take care of him once more. Talk about an emotional roller coaster, right? This family, this mother, these mothers, the sister, they all went through a sacrifice and a risk for the sake of one another. This is an excellent example of what family can and does encompass. I think about all the parents who decided to put their children up for adoption or into the foster system because they're unable to take care of them, or they have hope in something better. What can be a heartbreaking moment often stems from a place of love and sacrifice. I have a number of friends. I grew up in Vancouver, and I have a number of friends whose family immigrated from China because of their one-child policy, and they were pregnant. And a lot of reflections in their families came about sacrifice and risk to be together and to be family. I'm reminded here of those living in poverty who sacrifice their own meals so their children or their other family members can eat. Those who put their children on planes and trains and boats in hopes that they will land somewhere with a brighter future than the ones that they can see. A few years ago, when the Taliban took control in Afghanistan, I remember watching videos of people rushing for the airplanes, people pushing their children to the front of the line and staying behind themselves. The second story that we heard today is from the book of Joshua. This book sometimes can feel quite troubling. There's a lot of violence, there's a lot of conflict, but there's some important messages here too. These 2 Israelite spies were sent by Joshua to the city of Jericho, and they land in the house of Rahab, who is listed in some translations as a prostitute, in some translations as a harlot. A few different words to describe her, each pegged with their own bias, likely. Rahab's name appears 3 times in the Second Testament. In the Gospel of Matthew, Rahab is listed as one of the 4 women in the genealogy of Jesus. We have here a blood relative. In the letter to the Hebrews, she's exemplified and lifted up as an example of faith for Christians to embody in the early church and to carry with them. And in the book of James, she's raised up as someone who put action to her faith. She was more than just talk. She walked the walk, too. I have a book here that I'll carry with me out there after the service, so if you wanted to take a look, you can. And it's about prostitution and religious obedience in the Bible. And so one of the stories in here is of Rahab. And it hints that these men actually had some spare time, and so they were going to meet Rahab. And she pulls them in, and they're chatting. They go to do business with her, and she says, "Your money doesn't match your accent. You've likely been found out, and people likely are following you here. Let me help you." And it was in this moment of exchange that she brings them up to the roof and hides them. And I love to think about these intricacies of the story that maybe don't exist in the biblical text. But how did these people talk? What did they say? How did they figure each other out? Rahab had a faith in the God of the Israelites that were there, and so she protected them. This sort of care and structure really reminds me a lot about chosen family, especially. It really explicitly reminds me of the culture of ballroom or drag ball culture. If you're not familiar Ball culture originates in Black, queer, and trans spaces and revolves around exaggerated performance, not only of gender, but of profession, of class, of other markers of identity. When the balls first began, it was a way for people to act in a social or economic class that was not possible for them to reach at the time. It was very underground, very revolutionary, very subversive. In this culture, there's what is called houses or families. These are chosen families set up to maintain the structure and also for people to look out for one another. In each house, there are parent figures, a mother, a father, otherwise, and the children. Some houses in the ballroom culture are over 50 to 60 years old. The legacy continues to roll over. These structures are set up for people to feel in community and feel supported, so they know who and where to make sacrifices for. I've known some incredible people and stories through the ballroom and drag communities, and the concept of chosen family and sacrifice is super strong. As a drag artist myself, it's important to recognize these roots and pieces of our community when so many people are disconnected from their blood families. There's a way to still do this. There's a way to still be connected and be family and be community. As we reflect on Christian Family Sunday, on Mother's Day, on what it means to be family and care for one another, I invite you to think for a few moments about sacrifice and risk. Has someone in your blood or chosen family ever made a sacrifice for you that you really remember? Have you done so for somebody else? Can you imagine any sacrifices that perhaps you don't know about? Maybe you were a kid and you didn't get the full story. Maybe you were a grown-up and didn't get the full story. How does this feel for you to think about? The risk, the sacrifice of what it means to show up. Love, family, and commitment all take sacrifice. They all take some kind of risk. That's the beauty of it, I think. And it's always worth it somewhere. My prayer for you, my dear friends and family, is that you may live into your family and recognize the power of sacrifice and risk in your relationships. Amen.